If Asmodee continued to release expansions for seasons every year, year after year, I would be one happy camper. I doubt that the game has that amount of longevity to it as far as coming up with new cards, but I really just can't get enough of that game. It really is my favorite game, and so I am very happy to announce that there is yet another expansion that just came out called The Path of Destiny, following up with Enchanted Kingdom, which was the first expansion for the game. Now, Path of Destiny adds, of course, what everyone wants, and that is more cards. Yet again, there is 20 more cards to this game, 2 copies of each, so you have 40 cards, but they also added another card which apparently is only available in the first printing of the game. It's an extra bonus card that was actually part of a contest that people had to actually make a card out of that little fire demon looking guy that's on one of the player boards that there was never actually a card for. Now he's a card. You could probably only get him, the 2 copies of him, in the first printing. So if you're hesitating on buying the game, the expansion, you should probably go ahead and get it if you really want that card. But anyways, there's another new element to this game. It does add more of the ability chips and enchantment tokens. Ability chips and enchantment cards that were introduced with Enchanted Kingdom, which I was not that thrilled about. They're okay. Take them or leave them. But now they add another die, a single die called the Die of Destiny, which you can only play with if you use 2 of these particular enchantment cards. Does this add a lot of new stuff to the game? Is it worth using, even if I feel that the other 2 elements aren't worth using that much? Well, let's go ahead. I'll give you a little brief overview of the new components that come in this expansion. I'm not going to go over the base game. Then we'll come back and I'll tell you if it's really worthwhile. Alright folks, I'm just going to give you a brief overview of the new stuff that comes in Path of Destiny. First off, there are some bits here that are going to be used by 2 particular new cards in the game, so we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But the main centerpiece of the game is, of course, the Die of Destiny. Now, in order to use the Die of Destiny in your game, you have to use one of 2 particular enchantment cards. And yes, enchantment cards are back in this game, and they function the same as they did in Enchanted Kingdom. And in order to use that die, you have to use one of 2 particular ones, and those are 1 and 6, which are Divine Destiny and Force of Destiny. Now, they both work basically the same way. If you choose to use one of those, then every player is going to choose their power die the same way that they would in any other game. After every player has selected a die, then when it gets into the actual turn order, any player, instead of taking the actual effect of the season die that they roll, season die, not power die, they may instead choose to roll the Die of Destiny and take whatever is on here instead of their normal effects of the die. Now, anytime that you see one of these little crescent moon things here, that means you get to take one of these destiny points. And these come in 1s, 2s, and 5s, I believe, in 10s actually. So that's what that symbol means. Anytime that there is this little question mark symbol, that means you can take an energy token of your choice. There's one side that gives you 2. As a matter of fact, this side, of course, gives you a summoning gauge. And this one is going to give you a crystal or 3 crystals. And some of the faces give you 3 destiny points, 1, 2, and so on. What do those destiny points actually do? Well, for the most part, for the most of the game, you're just going to accumulate them and they'll sit there like a big lump. But at the end of the game, whoever has the most destiny points gets 20 extra prestige points towards their victory point total. If there's a tie for the most destiny points, each of those players that's tied gets 10 points. So that could be a pretty significant swing. Now, I mentioned there was 2 different cards that can give you the ability to use a Die of Destiny. Divine Destiny is just the basic one that says does everything that I just explained. Force of Destiny does everything I explained, but it also incentivizes you to use the die by giving you 3 bonus crystals every time you opt to roll the Die of Destiny. So it just sort of forces people to make it a better choice and to make the die get rolled more often, most likely. Some of the other enchantment cards, but not all of them. There's actually 10 total ones in the set, just the ones that I thought were interesting. Now, Io's Mastery basically says that whenever a player receives 15 or more crystals in a transmutation, they can look at the first card in the draw pile and either add it to their hand or discard it. That's fairly interesting. Season's Turn says that anytime that you, at the end of a round, if you have at least 1 of each type of energy in your reserve, you're going to get 4 extra crystals. And Into the Void is kind of interesting because basically whenever the year changes, each player has to sacrifice a power card unless they have either 15, 30, or 50 crystals depending on what year it is. So that's just a few of the new enchantment cards. The ability chips are back as well. There's not as many as there were in Enchanted Kingdom, but there are some and they're fairly interesting. This one here is number 14 is going to let you move back your Sorcerer token, the bonus token that penalizes you throughout the game, and in exchange you'll get 3 bonus points. Of course, if you're moving your Sorcerer token back, you'll get more points than that. This one here is going to let you actually take a card into your hands from either year 2 or year 3 piles. Obviously, you can't use this in year 3, and if you do, you're going to get 9 bonus points at the end of the game. And this one actually revolves around the new Die of Destiny. Basically, it gives you an extra Die of Destiny roll, and you get plus 5 points on top of that. So just a few of the ability tokens that comes with this. Now let's get to the actual cards. And this isn't every card, just some of the ones that I thought were most interesting. First, you have the Staff of Winter. The Staff of Winter is cool because basically in winter, a continuous effect, all energy tokens in your reserve are also treated as Earth energy tokens, and you can choose to tap it and discard a magic item to receive 3 energy tokens. The Chalice of Eternity is somewhat similar to one of the cards from the base game. Basically, at the end of the round, you can place an energy token from your reserve on it, or you could tap it, discard the 4 energy tokens to look at the top 4 cards of the draw pile, put 1 into play for free, and discard the remaining cards. Otis the Oracle is going to make you draw a card from the top of the deck for every player that's in the game, put them out in front of everyone, and on their turn, a player can actually summon one of those cards as if it were in their hand. Igramol the Banisher is actually a bonus card only in the first printing of the game. This is actually a little monster from one of the player boards that never had a card of his own, and someone won a contest in order to design the card. Basically, it's a fishing card. You play the card, name a card, and all opponents reveal their hands and discard all copies of the named card. If at least one card was discarded, receive the energy present in the card's summoning cost. So it's kind of risky, but it could be good if it actually works for you. Ethiel's Fountain is pretty cool because you get 3 crystals if you have no power cards in your hand every round. Now, this is where one of these little tokens come into play, specifically these little, what they would call, trap tokens. This is Ermion Psychic Cage. When it comes into play, when any player, including the person who played it, tries to summon a power card, they either have to discard the power card that they just summoned without doing any of its effects, or sacrifice another card that they have in play. If they do that, you would put the token here when you first play it. If they do that, you get rid of that token, and this card effectively becomes null and void and doesn't do anything. The Astorian Harp. You get to tap it and discard 2 energy tokens of the same type to increase your summoning gauge by 1 and receive 3 crystals. I think that's pretty good, actually. Twist of Fate is a weird card in that it only is affected during the prelude, the drafts. If you draft this card after everyone is done drafting, you get to discard it, draw 2 cards from the top of the deck, take 1 into hand and discard the other one. Before the tournament begins, which is the main gameplay, if neither of these cards, or if one or both of these cards were not drafted, you have to pull them out of the deck because they're essentially useless at that point. The Dial of Kuloth, increase your summoning gauge by 2, but perhaps more importantly, at the end of the round, if you have more power cards in play than any opponent, you can re-roll a season die that was not selected by the player. So basically, it gives you a little more control over how fast the years are going to go. Io's Minion is similar to the Ghost Bunny from the base set in that basically it's a card that no one wants. When you play him, you can receive an heir and increase your summoning gauge by 1, but then you may no longer gain crystals. However, you can choose to tap him and discard an heir to pass him to the player on your left. The Magma Core can be very good because you receive a fire token whenever an opponent summons a power card, and you can choose to sack this card in order to get 3 fire tokens right away. The Chrono Ring is very interesting because whenever the season marker moves forward by 3 or more, you get to receive either 4 crystals or an energy token of your choice. And finally, let's talk about probably the most interesting card of the game, and that is Aeolus's Replicator. Basically what this does, you put it into play, and you can, at any point on your turn, you can tap it, discard a blue to put a replica power card into play that counts as a magic item and gives you 7 prestige points at the end of the game. And that is what all of these other cards are. These are all replica cards. They do nothing else except give you points. They still count against your summoning gauge, and they're also a finite. So if more than one player has the Aeolus's Replicator, because there's 2 of them in the deck, whoever gets them all first gets them. And if they're run out, then the Aeolus's Replicator is essentially useless at that point. So that's just some of the new cards that are in the game. There's the new mechanics here. A lot of stuff in this expansion. Let's get back to my final opinion. Well, I mentioned with my Enchanted Kingdom review that the main reason to buy an expansion for Seasons is for the cards, and this one delivers again. I would make the argument that the cards from Enchanted Kingdom are a little bit better because they combo better off of each other. They're a little more generally useful and integrate better with the base set. I'm just saying that in general. I don't have analytical proof about that. I don't sit there and rate every card from 1 to 5 like a lot of other people do. I just play with what I like and what I know is what I think is fun. But that's my opinion. Now, there are some really fun cards in this set, and there are some that I think that the designer was just trying to be wacky with to try to break the rules of the game, which I don't necessarily have a problem with. I just don't think that they're that useful. The prime example is actually the sort of, I guess, promo card that is only in the first printing of the game, the one that the contest winner designed, which was the original, the little red demon guy from one of the player boards, Urgrizzle or Igramol or something like that. His ability is just basically fishing. You say the name of a card and hope that your opponent has it and they have to discard it. I don't think that's that useful. I'm sure that it could be, but it's so selectively useful. You have to guess not only who drafted what card, but whether or not they have it in the same year. They haven't put it on the table already. And the more cards that are in the game, by mixing more and more of the sets together, the less useful it is. So you should probably try and get the first. If you really love Seasons, you should probably be buying this anyways, and with the first printing, and therefore get the card. But if you don't even bother trying to track down the card. It's not that great. It's neat. I'll play with it. I'm not taking it out or anything, but whatever. I think it's an example of not a great card, but that's just me. I know that I have vastly different opinions on certain cards than other Seasons players have. Some of the cards that I really like, I always get these two mixed up. But Ethiel's Harp and the Estonian Harp and Ethiel's Fountain are really neat because the Fountain makes it more of a viable strategy to dump your hand early and to not just to try to get cards out as quickly as possible, especially for engine-driven games where you're just trying to get cards out to build more and more both energy tokens and crystals. Now you actually get compounding crystals by emptying your hand as well. The Estonian Harp gives you something to do with tokens to get more summoning if you really need summoning in a pinch, and you get crystals on top of it, so I think it's a good one. I think the Sepulchral Amulet is pretty awful. If you think about it, because, why would you want someone's junk from the discard pile most of the time? Some of the other interesting ones, Twist of Fate is interesting. I'm not sure how useful it is. This is another one of those cards I think they just threw in there to kind of break the game, but it's not that interesting to me. And plus, it's another little bit of work. If no one drafts one or two of the cards, you have to fish them out of the deck. And reshuffle, which is a pain if you're playing with every card. And I'm not sure that you should play with every card. I know I'm in the minority of this, but I think you should probably mix one or two sets. And if you're just starting off, you might as well just play with just the cards from this expansion. There's not a lot of them, but still. Anyways, that's a digression. You can play it however you want. I really like Aeolus's Replicator. I don't think some of the people in my group didn't like that card. It led me to victory once, for what that's worth, and I think that breaks the game in a very interesting way, and it's very, very cool. And it's another example of them taking the flavor and theme of former cards like the Cube of Aeolus and then reusing that later in different ways, and I really like that. Okay, that's enough about the cards, I think. There's some good, there's another bunny card, another Ghost Bunny card, Io's Minion, that bounces around the people, and that's okay. That's kind of neat. I like, the tension of that card. Everyone's like a hot potato. Everyone wants to kill or destroy as soon as they can. So that's something. So there's some neat cards. There's some that are just a little like, I think, what is it? The card, there's like a carnivorous plant one. That card I think is awful. I don't see what's useful about that card, but that's just me. But that's enough about the cards. Some of them are useful, some of them are not. That's going to be it, but it's still worth it to buy for the cards. Let's talk about the other stuff. There's ability chips, there's enchantment cards, whatever. Some of them are neat, some of them add a little flavor to the game, but none of them break. Again, like with Enchanted Kingdom, I don't think they're worth it if that's all you want this expansion for. They just don't add enough to me, and I probably won't play with them sometimes. But one of the enchantment cards I will play with a lot, maybe always from now on, are the Destiny cards. There's 2 Destiny cards in this game. They both basically do the same thing. One of them changes it a bit. Now, both of the cards will add the Die of Destiny to the game, which, as I explained in my overview, is that you basically get to do that instead of the actions of your season die. And I really love that idea because it is nice to know that you will always be able to do something on your turn. Yes, you'll, even if you get stuck with a die that you don't want in the normal game, you'll be able to do something with it. Maybe you get stuck with the die that only gives you crystals, but hey, at least it's crystals. And maybe you really need a summoning, but you ended up getting energy tokens, but you didn't really need them, but it also lets you transmute. Okay, and then you can transmute. But really, the game hinges so much on you getting what you need when you need it. And if you can't do that, it can be frustrating. But at least with the Die of Destiny, not only do you have the chance of shooting for that extra 20 points at the end of the game, which could be critical. Some games of seasons are just overwhelming. Like one of the first games we played with the new set, I had the highest score I've ever had. It wasn't even close. But then one of the other games we played, it was super close. I think it wasn't me that won. The person who won by like 10 points, which in season scoring, when you're getting into the hundreds, that is pretty small. 20 points swung that game, and sure enough, the person who won had won the battle for the Destiny die and got those extra 20 points. So that's a fun little extra aspect to the game that I think helps and improves it, as opposed to some of the enchantment cards, which don't really do much, and the ability chips, which don't really do much, and they're just another little bit of fiddliness. Now, the other version of the Destiny card actually incentivizes you to do it, because I think it's 4 crystals you get. If you roll the die, no matter what you get, you'll always get 4 crystals. So it pushes people to use that die. I probably don't like that as much. I think that it's a little bit too much of an incentive. I liked just the base Destiny die. That's probably what I'll opt to play with most of the time, and I'll probably always choose to play with it. I think it's a neat little aspect to the game. I don't know where they go from here, to be honest. I'm sure there's going to be more expansions. It's still a popular game. But you know what? More cards. More cards. I don't want them to be as wacky as the ones that were in this, but I still had fun with this set. I still recommend it. I think if you love seasons, more and more expansions is always a good thing, and this one will be totally worth it for you. And you should definitely try the Die of Destiny. It's not just a wacky gimmick. It really adds to the game. My name is Nick. This has been Board Game Brawl, and I'm reminding you to get out there and game every day in every way. Take care.